It's Monday, March 3rd. This is the Locked On Heat pregame show. The Heat will be without a couple of starters against the Wizards tonight. Not an excuse to lose this game. Plus, if the Heat want to trade for Kevin Durant, they could join a list of half a dozen other teams expected to pursue him this summer.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, credentialed Heat media member who covers this team every day. Thanks for jumping on before tonight's game against the Washington Wizards. We're going to be previewing tonight's game, get to the latest injury report, including what starters are already ruled out for the Heat, whether or not that's going to be an excuse to lose this game, what we expect from this game, key matchups, and best bets. But before we jump into tonight's game, some news, again, on the Kevin Durant front, which is just something that we are monitoring here on Locked On Heat, because, of course, we do expect that the Miami Heat will be interested in potentially acquiring Kevin Durant potentially this summer. Last week, Kevin Durant went on Draymond Green's podcast, said that he wants to end his career on his terms. Brian Windhorst, then on ESPN, said late last week that it's pretty clear where everybody stands, the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant. The Suns are expected to trade Kevin Durant this summer. Here's Shams Charania on ESPN with more this morning.
What's at stake here for the Phoenix Suns over the final stretch of the season?
Malika, the stakes are high. Unless there's a significant run here into the playoffs for the Phoenix Suns, league sources believe that there will be real changes in Phoenix coming to the Suns. And from a roster standpoint, that likely starts with Kevin Durant. And when we look back to the trade deadline, if we remember, Kevin Durant was blindsided when he was involved in trade conversations. But this offseason, from my understanding, what it would look like is the Suns and Durant would work together on any potential trade to a contender in a trade scenario. And I would expect 4 to 6 contending teams with some serious involvement in Durant. He's still playing at a really high level. He is extension eligible in the offseason, too. And as we know, with the Jimmy Butler situation, the extension plays a big factor. But everything with Durant hangs in the balance of not only the Suns and how they compete in the playoffs or not compete in the playoffs, but other teams, which teams get eliminated early, what teams could come about. A lot will come clear with Kevin Durant when we figure out what shapes up in the playoffs.
So a few things to get into there. Yes, Kevin Durant is extension eligible this summer. He is going to have quite a bit of leverage in where it is that he wants to go. So if he wants to go to Miami, then he can do, and Shams used the Jimmy Butler comparison there. I like the De'Aaron Fox comparison a little bit better when it comes to KD, because De'Aaron Fox, he was extension eligible, said no to the extension with Sacramento, and basically let it be known throughout the league, I want to go to San Antonio. I want to go play with Victor Wembanyama. And so if you were another team that would have been interested in De'Aaron Fox, like the Miami Heat perhaps, or, well, you might have been dissuaded to trade for De'Aaron Fox because he could be a free agent in 2026, and everybody knows, well, he might not sign the extension with you because eventually he wants to end up in San Antonio. And Kevin Durant, he can kind of do the same thing. He's also, he's extension eligible. If he doesn't sign an extension, he'll be a free agent in 2026, and he could say, look, you could trade for me, but I don't want to sign with you long term. At the end of the day, I hold the cards. I can decide whether or not I'm going to sign that extension. Even if you offer it, I don't have to sign it. And then I could become a free agent in 2026. So he can control some leverage there. He can kind of direct his way to where he wants to go. If, let's just say, like, the Milwaukee Bucks, it seems impossible for them to do it, but so they're a good example here. Let's say the Milwaukee Bucks want to trade for Kevin Durant, and Durant doesn't want to go there. You could just say, I don't want to sign an extension with you. And then if you're the Bucks, you're kind of taking a risk there. And so I don't know how many teams would be willing to take that risk. Shams did say 4 to 6 contending teams are expected to call for Kevin Durant. Why would Shams say that? He would only say that because basically those are the teams that we already know are expected to potentially pursue Kevin Durant. Other teams could come out of the woodwork. Other teams could emerge here. But it doesn't take much of a stretch of an imagination to figure out what these teams are. Minnesota called about Kevin Durant before the trade deadline. I would expect that they probably do that again. Golden State, I don't think they're going away. I think they could call about Kevin Durant. I know they just traded for Jimmy Butler. the Warriors like to think big. They dream big. I think they would love the idea of having Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry on that team. So I think the Warriors are another team that you could look at. I think the Miami Heat, obviously, are a team that will be looking at Kevin Durant. We've been talking about that. They called about Kevin Durant. The Suns and the Heat were very far apart on a potential framework. The Suns were reportedly asking for everything, and the Heat were just saying, we're not going to trade everything for this guy. Not right now in the middle of the season. We'll wait until the summer, and I think that was the right move. I think other teams make some sense. Memphis could call about Kevin Durant. I think the Knicks, depending on how this season goes, hey, do you guys want Mikal Bridges back? Is that interesting to you? Plus some other stuff? They can make some sense as a Kevin Durant landing spot. The other thing about this, too, is there are other teams that might want to trade for Kevin Durant, looking at him as something other than a long-term piece. Maybe they like the fact that he's on an expiring contract, and they say, well, we can kind of make this all-in move now, try to win a championship with 36-year-old Kevin Durant. We don't really want to sign him to an extension, but maybe there's some other long-term money that we can get off of here. I don't know that the Celtics would trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant, but if they're worried about their finances long-term, with Jaylen Brown making $60 million a year, they could say, what if we just offered Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant? And Phoenix can kind of reset things. Total speculation on my part. But I think those are the kinds of things that could also be possible when you're talking about a Durant trade. So I say all that basically to just express there are going to be a lot of teams that are out there looking to try to get Kevin Durant, which is why what Kevin Durant wants might be the most important thing here. I don't know that the Heat have the best trade package. If Boston is offering Jaylen Brown, again, totally hypothetical, but if they're offering Jaylen Brown, if the Knicks are offering some of these good young players, if Minnesota is offering somebody like Naz Reid, for instance, or something like that, Jaden McDaniels, Rob Dillingham, I don't know, but I know that Miami won't have the best offer, which is why it is on Kevin Durant to kind of pick his spot. And I don't know where Kevin Durant wants to end up. I've made the argument for Miami in the past. If you're in Phoenix and what you lack is stability and direction and coaching and organizational culture and all that stuff, the opposite of the Phoenix Suns is the Miami Heat. And if you're Kevin Durant, I can't imagine if what you are craving is stability, you can't find more stability than you would have in Miami, right? Even the San Antonio Spurs, with everything that's going on with Greg Popovich, and you know, obviously we wish him the best, but like they're not even that stable of a franchise compared to Miami anymore because of everything that's going on there. They're still stable. The other team that's been out there is Oklahoma City. I think that's more sort of wishing by media members who like the story of Kevin Durant returning to OKC. I don't know that Durant wants to do that. Miami just makes a lot of sense and it checks a lot of boxes. If you're Durant, you know that you can win with Bam Adebayo. You've won 2 gold medals with Bam. And Dwayne Wade talked about this in regards to the big three when LeBron and Chris Bosh came to Miami. He said, look, yeah, everybody kind of points to the Olympics as a moment where we can talk and actually maybe discuss our futures. But it's more than that. It's the fact that we're out there on the court playing meaningful basketball together. It's not the All-Star game. We're playing meaningful basketball, matriculating through a tournament together. That's where we kind of get the proof of concept where, we can play together and we can win at the highest level together. Why don't we do this in the NBA? Kevin Durant has done that not once but twice with Bam Adebayo. He knows he can win in the NBA with Bam. And if you're Kevin Durant at 36 years old, you want to end your career on your terms. Bam seems like a really good guy to do that with. Eric Spoelstra was on that coaching staff for the Olympics this past summer. Durant knows what Spo's about. So I think Miami makes a lot of sense for Kevin Durant. We'll see if Kevin Durant comes to the same conclusion. Bobby Marks over at ESPN also kind of outlined a potential trade package for Durant. Andrew Wiggins, one of Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez, and some draft picks. And Miami will be able to trade multiple first-round picks this summer. If that's the price, that seems like a no-brainer for Miami. The fan base might be split on what does a 36-year-old Kevin Durant really do. He's still very good. He's not the player that he once was. But if that's the price, don't you have to do it? Kind of have to do it. We'll look ahead to Heat versus Wizards tonight. Look, Miami dropped a tough game Sunday against the Knicks. They blew a 19-point lead, but there is a bright side that we'll talk about here coming up on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter. One stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Heat Wizards tonight, 7:30, Kaseya Center, Miami, on the second night of a back-to-back after dropping Sunday's game against the Knicks. They blew a 19-point lead in that game. I called it one of the most disappointing losses of the season, if not the most disappointing loss of the season for Miami, and I still feel that way. But the Wizards stink, and you should win this game. And there's a lot of injuries. We'll get into some stuff here that's potentially complicating there. But before I get to any of that, all of that is details. There's no reason why the Heat should not win this game. They're 8.5-point favorites, despite some of the injury concerns. The Wizards are 11-48. They have the worst record in the NBA. They stink. They have the worst offense in the league. They have the third worst defense in the league. They're going to be without Jordan Poole. They already traded Kyle Kuzma. There's nobody on this Wizards team that you're afraid of. Nobody. Rookie Alex Sarr, the second pick in the draft. He's playing a little bit better lately. Not afraid of him. Bilal Coulibaly is a good player. Not afraid of him. Corey Kispert can hit some threes. Not afraid of him. There's nobody on this team that you're afraid of. So the Heat should win this game. And as disappointing as Sunday's loss was, and it would have been the first time since January 11th that Miami had won 3 straight games had they been able to finish that game against the Knicks. First time since January 11th that they would have won 3 straight games. Like the 2-game win streak, that was consecutive wins, first time in a month. It's been a long time since Miami has put together a consistent stretch of winning. And it is the thing that I've been asking for post-trade deadline. The only thing I've ever wanted to see is just put a stretch of wins together. Now, that does not mean that I need a 10-game win streak the way that Cleveland keeps rattling. The Cleveland's got like 10 or 3 10-game win streaks already this season. I don't expect that from this Heat team. They're not that good. But they're good enough to put together a good month. And the Knicks game notwithstanding, this is an easier part of their schedule here. I still think it's possible. And that's the bright side that I was hinting at. Yes, the Sunday loss, that one's going to sting. But if you beat the Wizards tonight, as you should, that's 3 out of 4 games that you won. 3 wins out of 4 tries. 3 wins out of 4 games. That's that stretch of winning that I'm talking about. You got a good win against the Pacers on Friday night. That is a good quality win. The Pacers are a good team. All right, so it's not just beating up on the Wizards every night. You got a good win in there, and you were up on the Knicks by 19 points. We've seen it, right? We have seen stretches of this team look great. There's a good team in here somewhere, and I just want to see them put it together for more than they aren't putting it together. And blowing the double-digit leads and the struggles in the fourth quarters and all that stuff, the rotation questions that we have from Eric Spoelstra, all that stuff. Those are details, and they're important ones. But you got to put a winning stretch of basketball together. And if you beat the Wizards tonight, that's 3 wins out of 4 games. That's what I'm talking about. You've got the you've got the Cavaliers on Wednesday night. You got Minnesota on Friday, Chicago on Saturday. That's a little bit of a tougher stretch coming up. This Wizards game is really important. Get this win. You're probably not winning in Cleveland. They're too good. But that Minnesota game, that Bulls game, those are winnable games. Winnable games at home. Those are winnable games. You win those, you've won 5 out of 7 games. That's a winning stretch. And that's what the Heat are going to need to do if they're going to move up in the standings, potentially 6. But more important than even the standings, guys, more important than just the standings, proof of concept. Can this team put consistent winning basketball on the court? That is my main question with the Heat. Instead of always 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and they put it all together. Let's get to the injury report here and some of the key matchups. So the Heat, they're going to be without Kel'el Ware. Ware sprained his knee in Sunday's loss. Eric Spoelstra sounded like he wasn't overly concerned about that injury after Sunday's game. He said that Ware should be fine, but that was obviously before he was ruled out for Monday night's game. We'll see. Again, maybe the team I trust the least when it comes, well, maybe the Sixers at this point, but I don't really trust the Heat when it comes to injury updates anymore. They've kind of lost my trust on this stuff. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Khalil there. But that's a big loss because obviously not just do you lose your rookie, and I was kind of looking forward to second pick in the draft, Alex Sarr versus Khalil Ware. Ware outperformed Sarr in Summer League. And you could argue maybe he's even outperformed Sarr so far this season, even though Sarr's played a little bit better as of late compared to where he was at the start of the year. But I was looking forward to that matchup. We're not going to get it. Khalil Ware's out for the game. Davion Mitchell also added to the injury report. He's questionable with a left quad contusion. So that's also something to monitor. Jaime Jaquez Jr., Andrew Wiggins, both of those guys also questionable with their ankle injuries. Of course, Nikola Jovic still out with a broken hand. The young guys, Josh Christopher, Keyshawn Johnson, Isaiah Stevens, they remain away from the team. They are on G League assignment, so we won't be seeing them tonight either. So no Ware, potentially no Mitchell, potentially no Jaime, potentially no Wiggins. That's a lot of guys that Miami would be missing. The Wizards, they're going to be without Jordan Poole. He's out with an elbow injury. No Sadiq Bey. No Malcolm Brogdon. Even if the Heat are without all those, even if the Heat are missing Ware, no Mitchell, no Jaquez, no Wiggins, they should still win this game. That's how bad the Wizards are. You've got Bam. You've got Tyler Hero. You should still win this game. There is no question that you should still win this game. In terms of the key matchups, I'm looking at Alex Sarr. He's averaging 13.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and a block over his last 10 games, playing a little bit better. He's also making 2.7 3-pointers per game during that stretch. So look for the Wizards to try to get Alex Sarr involved on the perimeter, move Bam away from the basket, and potentially open things up for Keyshawn George and Bub Carrington and Bilal Coulibaly and these guys to kind of get to the basket. That's what they're going to be trying to do here. I don't know that Miami takes the bait there. Frankly, I wouldn't. If Sarr makes 2, 3, or 4 3-pointers in this game, let him have them. But that's the matchup. And then Coulibaly, he's a good player, right? It's not like I'm not sitting here and saying the Wizards have no good players. Coulibaly's a good player. He's long, he's a weird matchup guy. Bub Carrington can kind of go off every once in a while, especially for mid-range. He's a little bit longer. If you don't have Wiggins, so I expect the Heat to probably start Highsmith. Maybe not if Ware was going to play. As we saw, they started Jaime when Wiggins was out, and then they went with Alec Burks on Sunday when Wiggins and Jaime were both hurt because Eric Spoelstra just wants that amount of offense on the court. And I think he was worried Bam, Ware, and Highsmith and Davion Mitchell. Now we have no spacing on the floor outside of Tyler Hero. But if Ware, Mitchell, Wiggins, Jaime, if all these guys are out, first of all, you don't really have the luxury of worrying about spacing. You kind of just got to play your best players. So I expect him to do that. I think Highsmith is certainly one of the best 5 players with all of those injuries if all those guys don't play. So maybe you probably put Highsmith on Coulibaly. You've got Bam manning the paint. Defensively, you should still have enough, even without Khalil Ware. And offensively, you're going up against the worst defense in the league. Ironically enough, no Jordan Poole. That might help Washington's defense, but also no Malcolm Brogdon in this game. They have Marcus Smart. They have Chris Middleton. Those are obviously good players. They're veterans. They're players that you got to worry about. Marcus Smart, I expect him to probably guard Tyler Hero. Marcus Smart's not the player he was in Boston. So, we'll see how that holds up. Middleton, man, I just don't know what to expect from him on a game-to-game basis. His ankles are made of glass. He hasn't been totally productive this season. It's why he got traded from the Milwaukee Bucks in the first place. So I'm not really worried, again, not scared about anybody on the Wizards. All of these injuries aside, the Miami Heat should still win this game going away. In terms of the best bets, let's look at FanDuel. Miami, 8.5-point favorites in the game. Again, I don't know how you bet on Miami anymore. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do that with any sort of confidence, but if you were ever going to bet on the Heat to cover a spread, and a big spread like this 8.5-point spread, it would be this game. But all the injuries, that makes me a little nervous. I like the player props here. I think we're in for a big Bam game. The Wizards just don't have anybody to guard him. And FanDuel has player props 25 plus points, Bam Adebayo. You can get that at plus 215 odds. Those are good odds. Plus 215 for Bam to score at least 25 points against 2. Sarr's not defending him. They don't really have much there in the way of defensive presence in the paint. This is a game where I think Bam can go off. Bam played really well Sunday against the Knicks until he was basically frozen out of the offense for the last 6 minutes of regulation. Bam's been on it. He's been feeling it. He's been really feeling it from mid-range. He's got that 15-foot jumper. Really, he just isn't missing from there recently. And with all the things kind of up in the air and the unknowns and Washington's defense, I think they're going to feed Bam early, and I don't see a way that Washington takes that away from him. So give me Bam 25 plus points. That's my FanDuel best bet. We'll be back here tonight, me and David Ramil, my co-host, with our post-game reactions to Heat versus Wizards. Of course, thanks to all for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.